But yeah, I mean, the thing is like most people just don't even plan 10% as much as they should plan stuff. And that's the last site we sold. Like we built it in 18 months. We sold it for like mid six figures. And it's like the reason why is because it was planned and it was like a factory. Like it was just like we basically broke down all the keywords per type of content, and then like we'd say, okay, here's like 80 of these, and then literally like we'd have writers produce all 80, and like some like I was publishing every Friday basically. I would just like I have everything in draft, and I would just go through the whole thing and publish 80 pages on Friday, and get everything indexed. And then on Monday I would check everything's been indexed, and then queue it for link building. And it's like just building a factory basically. And so, but like it only works because everything was already in the spreadsheet in the beginning. It was already planned and so on. If you just like start and you're like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna like freestyle it and just like start a site on parenting or whatever, and then figure it out as I go.
Welcome to Show Me the Nuggets, where each week Joe chats with world-class entrepreneurs to find out the key principles, strategies, and processes that lie behind their outstanding achievements. Now, your host, the no bullshit serial entrepreneur, Joe Troyer.
Hey everybody, Joe Troyer here from Digital Triggers, and today we have a very special guest, Gael Breton. And Gael is one of the founders over at Authority Hacker, and I'm super excited to have Gael on the line. Gael, you want to do a quick intro for yourself, brother?
Hey Joe, well, first of all, thanks for having me. And yeah, basically I run a business with my business partner Mark for almost 9 years now. Actually, we've been working together for a long time. Which is why you probably hear us banter each other all the time on the podcast. And we run a portfolio of authority sites, and we talk about this stuff on authorityhacker.com, basically like the stuff we do and the stuff we learn, the stuff we test. We try to make it like down in the trenches, share the actual stuff. Sometimes it's experimental, sometimes it's not necessarily statistically significant or anything. We just try to talk about the actual stuff we do. It can be contested many times, but at least we try to, like, it's like when I read a lot of blogs or I listen to a lot of podcasts, I just feel like the same generic stuff just keeps coming up all the time. And you sit up at your computer and you're like, now what? And so we're trying to like avoid that. I'm not saying we manage to do that 100% of the time, but we're trying to just be like, okay, this is the actual stuff in real life, how it's happening, basically.
Big shout out to you guys. Definitely a blog that I follow and one of the only podcasts that I listen to these days. So definitely, guys, check out the podcast at minimum. I would make a suggestion there. So your guys' big thing is really getting into building authority sites, right? At the end of the day, that's like your focus these days.
I mean, we basically, so like most companies are built around their product range, right? So they're selling products, and the website, the whole business is based around selling the products. The way we build our business is a little bit different. We build it around the topic. And then that site just becomes a platform to start whatever business venture you want it to be. And many people are interested in making it like some kind of passive income. So usually it's going to be affiliate marketing based, or it's going to be even advertising based. Advertising has been really good lately. Nobody talks about it. But like huge networks like Mediavine, networks like AdThrive, etc., have such high RPMs that it's actually becoming quite competitive with lower end affiliate marketing. So a lot of people are interested in these business models, but really we like to do info products as well. We don't really do e-commerce, but we have members that do that. Like some members of our pro community, like they just do e-commerce. They take our stuff and they run e-commerce from it. But basically what we're doing is we're building a site around topic. Let's say like gardening for apartments in the city center, or whatever, like parenting when you have twins, or whatever, if you want to like go into like some specifics. Yep. And then based on that, you can just roll a different amount of business models that most people start with affiliate and advertising, and then they just go up the ladder with what generates more profit, but usually gets more involved, basically. So that's kind of like the bird's eye view of authority sites.
Yep. So instead of picking one specific product, you're going after a niche instead. You're getting the traffic in for that niche, and then ultimately figuring out what is the best way
to monetize. Yeah, you build a marketable audience that has a common interest, and then you just build offerings for them, whatever it is.
And is the primary or only method that you guys are using for traffic these days SEO and organic?
No, we have sites that get traffic from like Pinterest. Okay. We do more Facebook ads than people would think we do, actually. So I think like we're like definitely in the 5 figures a month ad spend on like mid 5 figures for Facebook ads right now. We do a little bit of AdWords, but not that much. For our info products, we have affiliates. They send us traffic. So we're kind of like on the other side. So there's a little bit of everything. We're not the biggest guys on social media. Pinterest is interesting because Pinterest is kind of like a search engine. And Facebook, well, you kind of get involved when you spend quite a bit of money on Facebook ads, then you eventually have to learn how to craft like engaging stuff, just because you're going to get more value out of it. So we are involved in that, I would say, in social media. But like, if you ask me about Instagram, etc., like I kind of want to get into it, but I wouldn't say like listen to me. I would say there's probably better people right now to listen to. So yeah, that's basically it for traffic generation.
So when it comes down to naming the site, how niche or how broad you go, what are kind of your recommendations there? The reason I asked, this just came up on a podcast that I recorded the other day with Matt Diggity, and Matt was talking about when he's buying sites and selling sites that one of the big criteria for him is buying something where he can not be too niche down, right? And he can expand. So when it comes into kind of picking a niche for you and picking that site name, and how do you suggest people do that?
I mean, for Matt, it's a bit different because he basically doesn't start new sites anymore. He just buys them. Whereas we start new sites from scratch, so we have a bit more flexibility in the way we actually angle it. And I don't mind going very niche. Basically, the only question is like, where's the money, basically? And so like you need to, I don't care. I just need to have like a really good offer I want to sell to people. Or like it's like, here's an email list of 10,000 people in the twins parenting niche. How are you going to make money from them? And so we answer that question, and then that's the question: do we do a parenting site or a twin parent site? Like that's how. Like, do you want to niche down or do you want to go broad? Right? The reason Matt goes broad is because he buys these sites and basically he just broadens up and then just has more, like just pumps content on it, ranks for more keywords, makes more money, flips it for higher multiple. But it's a lot. It's very different when you are actually starting the site from scratch because you don't necessarily have to have this massive uplift. The uplift is from 0 to X, not from X to Y. You know. Right. And so like you can allow yourself to niche down more provided you have the good offer. Like the site we sold in January, like we had an offer that was paying us like, I think we were making like $50 per sale or something. And a lot of our articles were really niche down. And to be honest, like you can, I can't tell the niche. I'm not allowed legally for a year and a half, but like it was really niche down most of the content. And you could easily build a mid 5-figure per month site just on that tiny sub niche, just on that one affiliate offer. And so it can make sense to be really niche down in that case. Whereas if you're going for like a really common niche where you're just going to do Amazon affiliates, for example, like Amazon affiliates just pays very little. You need to be broad enough. You need to have hundreds of keywords you can rank for, just because you would just not make enough money if you're too niche down and your only monetization is Amazon affiliates. Same with if you're going to monetize with ads, because if you're going to monetize with ads, well, you need a lot of page views. If you're too niche down, you're not going to make a lot of money. Unless you're like in like lawyer keywords, etc., and you're going to make like $80 per 1,000 page views. It doesn't make sense. So it really depends on your monetization. If you have a really good offer that's really niche down, but will convert high, I have no problem niching down because we buy $10 domains. Otherwise, well, yeah, just what does it take to make, let's say, mid 5 figures a month, which is like kind of the goal for any site we start, basically.
Okay. So kind of just your suggestion to people is kind of work backwards from the monetization to figure out how broad or how niche down you want to go.
Yeah, that's basically it. And it's like, if you go broad, just categorize your site properly so you have a lot of subcategories. Very often what's smart to do is branding broad, but then making subcategories on very small sub-niches. And that can help a lot. Like, for example, like we had a camping site, and then I found like the sub niche, the RV sub niche was amazing because like everything's 12 volts. So when you plug it, it's actually not the same electricity. So like best 12 volt TV, best 12 volt fridge, etc. These are 1,000 queries per searches per month words, and they are low competition and the items are expensive. So like that is a great sub niche you can go into. And it's like I would start a camping site, I would make an RV sub niche, and I would just like hammer it. I would just hammer that sub niche, you know. So that's the example of something that you can do when you start a new site, basically.
Love that. Yeah, thanks for the example. That helps. Cool. So the main monetization methods that you're focused on, then you kind of said were Amazon. Some of your people do some e-com. What are the other major platforms that you're focused on these days?
Like mostly, I mean, advertising. I'm telling you, advertising is completely underrated right now. But you know, it's like So advertising with these networks now, like you can make like 12 to 15 bucks per thousand visits, I would say. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it works for any keyword, including
Yep.
the easiest keywords ever. So really, like if you convert to affiliate, you can 2-3x, because it's easy to get a lot of traffic from easy keywords than it is from like affiliate queries where you have like hundreds of affiliates competing. So it's like you kind of need to 2 or 3x the RPM to really compare it to affiliate, and it gets close enough to be looking at that. So I'd say advertising, Mediavine and AdThrive, they're probably good at that. Amazon, we don't really do new Amazon sites anymore. Like it's good for beginners, but for where we were at, it's not high paying enough, to be frank.
Okay.
So that'd be like private offers, meeting people. Like eventually, like you get to that kind of like networking game in affiliate, where like you start with like the networks, etc., and then you just you get introduced. People know about you, etc. You just email companies, you do that kind of stuff, and then you end up getting better offers or higher payouts than what is advertised publicly, or that kind of stuff, and build these relationships. Like same like the site that we saw in January, like we literally had the CRO guys from the company we were promoting literally consulting for our site for free because we're moving so much volume for them. So you kind of like build real business relationships with the people you affiliate with, and we run our own funnels as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely say that the number one affiliate offer that I ever drove traffic to, long term, the way that it became number one is it was a private offer, right? It was a public offer at first, and then they saw how much traffic we were driving and sales we were driving, and we met them at an event, and it was like, oh my gosh, we've been trying to reach out to you guys, like we were trying to hide from them, right?
Yeah,
like we didn't
right?
want them to talk to us, right? Like we wanted to hide behind the computer screen, and by meeting them in public, we were able to come up with a much better deal together that made us a whole lot more money in the long term.
For us, like very, very often, we manage to get 2-3 times the commissions that are advertised publicly, provided we have some decent volume already. Like, don't come to an affiliate program owner with no sales, no site, no nothing, and ask for 3x. But like, if you're moving hundreds or thousands of sales per month, then it's something that's very realistic for them. Like, if you consider like paying salespeople, like they get paid way more than most affiliates. So it's like, provided you're a reliable source of sales, then it's something that they would be considering, especially when they have competition.
Okay, cool. So you said you guys just ended up selling another website, and I didn't know about that one. But you obviously can't share a lot. I understand that.
Legally, I'm not allowed. Yeah.
Yeah. When you look at like building another one, right? Now that you just sold yet another one of these authority sites, what's on your mind? Like what are the changes, right? Like what's the retrospect, right? Like what's okay, we did it again, right? What are the changes? What's the feedback loop for you like?
I mean, the approach we take to like building sites these days is like very different from like the first sites we built, because we just planned the first 500 pages for that site like right off. Like we literally have like a Dinah List with like the site, like the whole structure before we even buy the domain, right? So like it's all done. Like it's just like, okay, here's the spreadsheet. How do we make it a website? But like everything's just ready before we even launch anything. So really, but we spend like 2 months just planning and thinking, etc. Like we tend to buy even multiple domains until like we actually pick like we kind of like, it's like you pick something and then like 2 weeks later you hate it. So you get that multiple times until you actually get the final branding that you like and so on. But yeah, I mean, the thing is like most people just don't even plan 10% as much as they should plan stuff. And that's the last site we sold. Like we built it in 18 months. We sold it for like mid 6 figures. The reason why is because it was planned and it was like a factory. Like it was just like we basically broke down all the keywords per type of content, and then like we'd say, okay, here's like 80 of these. And then literally like we'd have writers produce all 80, and like I was publishing every Friday basically. I would just I have everything in draft, and I would just go through the whole thing and publish 80 pages on Friday, and get everything indexed. And then on Monday I would check everything's been indexed, and then queue it for link building. And it's like just building a factory basically. And so, but like it only works because everything was already in the spreadsheet in the beginning. It was already planned and so on. If you just like start and you're like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna like freestyle it and just like start a site on parenting or whatever, and then figure it out as I go. Usually it doesn't work. That's why I was saying, like when you talked about the name, I'm like, no, where's the money? Because like I definitely want that thing planned before I even consider getting into the niche. We'll talk to most affiliate providers if we're going to do affiliate marketing before we even have a domain name, etc. But it's not something a beginner should do. It's something that someone that has done this before should do, because for us, like, we have all this history of sites that we've done, etc., that we can showcase, etc. So people know we're serious when we come into a market. And even though we don't have the credential necessarily in that niche, because we have credential on other things, people take us, like, they listen to us. We were able to ask them information about how much they sell through their affiliate program, what's the average GPC, et cetera, et cetera. And that's also part of the niche selection, together with like the planning, etc. And then we can project how much this site can make, basically. So yeah, new sites, it's mostly a lot of planning. And to be frank, 70% of the planning just never ends up being a site. Like, we always find a reason not to do it, So like, for every site we start, there's like 5 or 6 quite in-depth niche research that are just thrown in the trash,
So when it comes to niche research, like what are the things that you're looking at, right? Like for me, I'm looking for kind of things that have already been proven. Like, I don't want to reinvent the wheel, right? Like,
you just want to find people who make money already.
Yeah, find people that are making money already, and then those are the markets that we're going to go into. Do you take a similar philosophy, or kind of how do you approach niche research?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we have like a lot of criteria. So like, we only do non-paid outreach link building, basically. So we don't pay for links. I'm not saying we will never pay, but at this point we don't pay. And if we ever do, we'll just let people know. So like, we're trying to be honest with the audience. So like, a lot of things come into that because of like, we play on our strengths. We know what our process looks like. And so like, if we go in gambling, non-paid link building, just forget it, Travel, forget it, etc. So you kind of like know what processes you already have in place from like your previous projects, and then you just transpose them to what you're going to do for this one. And then based on that, you just have like deal breakers. And then as you just go through these niches, you're like, no. And then like, when a niche ticks all these niches, right, for us, it needs to be family friendly. It needs to be compatible with doing the white hat outreach that we do. It needs to, like, things like, we like when niches have like scientific terms and complex jargon, etc., because these are keywords opportunities that we can take over. And like, we tend to like be quite good at creating info content that explains clearly difficult concepts. And so like, it's a great source of links for us. So like, when a niche has that, it's a plus point, etc. So we can have that spreadsheet with like all these columns. It's like, it gains or it loses points for each column, and then at the end you kind of have a score for the niche, and that's how you pick, basically. But like, obviously, sites making money. Like, we kind of have like big sites making money, small sites making money. Like, so we have DR ranges like DR 60 plus, DR 25 or less. Like, do they actually rank for some money queries, all that stuff, so that we can monetize early, like reach break even quick enough. All these things. And so we kind of have all these things, go through that, and then whichever niche has like the top 3 niches with the highest points, kind of like get into a proper discussion.
So you kind of have like a whole grading kind of criteria almost based upon your guys' experience and kind of the assets that you have, so to speak, in your systems and processes to make sure that you're the one that is best suited for you specifically.
Yeah, we're not reinventing the wheel every time we start a new site, right? So we need to like use what we're good at. We need to use our strengths. We need to like pick niches where what we're better at than most people actually stands out and gives you a significant advantage. Yeah. Otherwise, it's like you're getting into a niche where it's just going to be a lot of hassle. And even if you manage to be successful, there's going to be so much work, maybe so much money spent, that the profit in the end is not going to be nearly as high,
So how do you get your ideas for a niche, though?
There's different areas. So, I mean, marketplaces are a great place to look at, for example, like both sides have sold, because people can't lie. It's like, it's like you go to an SEO conference, most numbers people give you, divide them by 2, and then you probably get what they actually make. In site sales, it's a lot more difficult to do that because, you're shooting yourself in the foot to actually sell your site. So I quite like marketplaces. Just honestly going through affiliate networks as well. So like, pick the top offers, look at the sites that rank, look at what else they promote, look at their angle, look at all of that. Like affiliate networks, pick affiliate offers, just even Googling, like we rank for like affiliate programs. But like Googling affiliate programs, etc. Look at all this stuff. We kind of like between 1 and 3, so it depends when it's released. And just look at these, and then look at the sites that promote these, and look at what else they promote, and kind of like, you can make kind of this graph with like circles that overlap each other, and kind of get an idea where the center is or where like the sub niches are, etc. And then you get an idea. There's a cool site called like highpayingaffiliateprograms.com, I think, as well, that has like a lot of them. One More Cup of Coffee has a bunch of them. Niche Hacks has a bunch of them. So usually just look at these, Yeah, and like look at these monetized queries, like these best queries, these alternative queries. Look at the biggest affiliate sites. I mean, go on CNET, go on all of that. Look at all these things. Then look at their competitors on Ahrefs, and then like you find the small sites that are like comparable and so on. So it's a mix of like, it's not really something we're like, oh, we're just gonna look for a niche right now and we're gonna look one, but rather like taking note as we bump into stuff as we walk as well. And you just have like this giant clip pad of like stuff that you've collected. And when it comes down to like actually make a list of things that you should consider, then you already have a bunch of stuff you've collected over time.
So do you guys have kind of the same core team that you have working on all of your authority sites? Or do you onboard and train kind of for each site that you build out? Or tell me a little bit about how the rubber meets the road and you actually get all the work done and all the content done and all the, link building and...
Editorial is specific to each site, actually. Editorial people actually they know about the niche and specific to each site. But like other processes like link building, like even illustrations and all these other things like videos that we do, all the like other types of media like editing, this stuff is cross-site. So we have part of our staff that is site-specific when it comes to actually delivering knowledge, knowing about the industry, doing all of that, like putting actual content together. And then the people that format it, promote it, make the actual technical part of the site happen, that kind of stuff, they're common to all the sites. So yeah, there's two sides to the team basically. But like it's a bit of a pain to build a new editorial team for each site as well.
What goes into an editorial team for you guys? Is it just a writer and an editor, or?
Yeah, that's it. Really, it's like there's like one main editor and like maybe two to three writers. Obviously, it depends. Like writers, their dogs eat their homework every second week and so on. So it's just it's complicated to maintain ongoing stuff, but yeah, it's usually around that, like 2-3 writers, one editor.
So man, that's why your content turns out so good, right? But definitely a problematic process, I'm sure, finding a new writing team and a new editor for every niche you go in. Hats off to you.
It's not just that. It's like people really suck at creating critical, where they're critical towards what they're writing. Like most people write shitty list posts and stuff like that. And the big sites get away with it because they have so much domain rating. But to be frank, if you're a brand new site in an industry, you need to stand out to some extent. You need to create original data. You need to sites that we create now, we actually get the products. We do real life tests with them. We do all of that. Like we have original data, original photos, original all of that comes with these, and we bring something new to the industry. Then we visualize it in a nice way. Then we do all these things, etc. And so that's what allows our site to like really come out. Like once again, the site that we just sold, like literally people were asking to link to us to use some of the assets that were on the site. Actually, like people would email us and be like, hey, can we use your graphics? Can we use all of that, etc. So even professional writers are usually really bad at structured content, even professional editors. So we need to input quite a lot of ourselves in these sites to actually get them to the level where we want them to be critical. I mean, if you read like reviews on like Authority Hacker or something like that, you get the idea. Like we try to really push it, use this thing in real life and be like, well, I wish this was better, or this is kind of okay, but didn't really work as intended or something.
Yep.
And most people just don't do that, and nobody really asks them to do that, and therefore they just don't have that experience in real life. Even like I have people that I can't really say who they work for because that would give the niche away, but who work for really big funded startups as writers. And we're like 10 times more demanding than these startups that like really, really big ones that you definitely know about. And yeah, when I see what they're doing there, I'm like, wow, that's shit.
It's in my opinion, hiring writers and managing writers is a very, very difficult task. And I gotta say, like from everything that I've seen of your guys's, you guys have done a really good job with it. So hats off to you guys for sure.
Yeah, I mean it's pain. Like sometimes like once again I'm gonna tell another story of this site we saw because it's like the most recent big one. Like we literally had writers work for 2 months where we didn't look too much with Mark, and we come back to the editorial process and we're like, what the fuck is this? And literally threw 2 months of work away and just rewrote absolutely everything with these guys on full-time salary, and it's like these things happen, these things cost money. And also like it's not because you achieve high quality once that it will stay that way. You need to also enforce it regularly, and that's even harder than achieve it in the first place,
Yeah. Takes a lot of patience. I feel like everything
Yeah.
else, pretty much, you can get away with being pretty impatient, but content, you got a lot of work cut out for you.
It depends what you want to do, right? I mean, you can do shittier content and do okay. Like it's like Google will give you traffic regardless. Like just you kind of put the same subheadings as the top ranking content, and you hammer a bunch of links to your page, and you still kind of rank. But these sites at 2, 3, 4, 5 years horizon, they never do that well. Like they do well for a year, for 2 years, and then you rarely hear about them again. And magically, the person that was in charge just has a brand new exciting project. That basically means the previous one fails.
Yep.
And so and that's one thing we're seeing. It's like the first of all, you get higher multiples. Like the site we actually sold for like 17% higher than listed price, when most sites sell for like 12% lower than listed price.
Yep.
So it seems like there's a demand from buyers, so you can actually get your money's worth for trying a little bit harder. And it's like we're actually doing this correlation study now on headlines. So like we just scraped 1.5 million headlines from Reddit, Twitter, and Google, and just kind of like try to correlate like which words get the most links, which words get the most share, etc. At the same time, what we did is we did a correlation study between like social shares, organic traffic, and backlinks, and they actually all feed each other. Meaning that actually, if you just create like cookie cutter content for Google, it's like you would never share this stuff, like never ever. It's like how to pour a glass of water tutorial type of thing. It's like nobody cares. Like it's a great keyword, but nobody cares. And we saw that across the biggest sites, the correlation is incredible between like the sharing, the links, and the organic traffic. And so between that and what we've been observing from other sites, so like we have another site that's like that had been pretty much exclusively getting traffic from Pinterest, but like a lot of traffic. That site now ranks number one for so many huge queries without ever having gotten any kind of link building, and without even having much content on the pages. Most pages have like 200 to 300 words of content, like almost nothing. So that really shows that creating engaging content that people actually do appreciate pays in the long run. In the short run, no. Just buy the 2-star text broker content. You can probably rank with that short term. If you want to do something that's long term, that is going to sell for a high multiple and all of that, then you need to push the boundary a lot more than most SEOs do.
So speaking of your website sell again, did you go about building that site with the end in mind of kind of selling it? Like, was that the plan all along, or did
I wasn't sure.
Opportunity just kind of pop
Not
up
really.
for you?
No, it's just like, so we kind of reached that ceiling where we beat all the smaller sites. Like we were just exactly between, there was kind of a batch of small sites, and then there was the top players. The top players were still very far off. It was still like 2 years of work and probably working less on other projects to get in their range. But we had some quite creative like angles for keywords and content that just sold really well. So revenue was good. And yeah, it's like there wasn't much in terms of progression for the next few years, just reinvesting most of the money to grow. So we kind of reached that fork where we're like, well, how much do we care about the other stuff we're doing? Or do we just want to commit to this one? And honestly, we just chose to do the other stuff we were doing as well. And so that's why we just decided to sell it. It was the right time. We would have experienced a bit slower growth, although the site is growing quite nicely right now. But they've done some things that I would probably not have done to my site. And yeah, so that's why we sold it. It was just a good time. We cashed out nicely. Like it was only 18 months old as well. We were already profitable just on commissions plus the sell. It was nice actually.
Yeah, for sure. So can you take us into a little bit of the sales process and talk about kind of where you sold it, how you sold it, kind of the multiple you were looking for, any tips or tricks? Like you guys have obviously sold multiple sites now.
I can't give the multiple because we give the revenue numbers on the blog. So it's actually, I'm not allowed to give the sell price. So you could actually guess. So I can't give you the multiple, but I mean, Mark did most of the sales. So I'll give you the bird's eye view of it. That was quite easy. First of all, it's like getting quotes from most brokers. And having done that, I would say get quotes from a lot of brokers because it was amazing the range of prices we got from this. Like, it's like one very popular broker gave us a quote for less than half of what we sold the price for. And when they gave us that, I was like, no way. Like I'd rather just keep it. And they were like, oh, you're not a professional. Let's see, like sell it and then we'll talk about it. So we sold it for more than double, and then I was like, let's talk about it. And, I mean, they were quite open to talk about this after. It wasn't bad, but still, like all I would say for like anyone that's doing sell side is get off course because the range is massive, and overall it's a very new industry, and honestly, it's not as professional as it's going to be in 4 or 5 years, etc. And so like it's kind of like a lot of guys just become side brokers overnight or something and kind of come up with their own process, but they're so different at this point that it's worth experiencing a lot of them. So yeah, we got a bunch of quotes. And analysis, the most important is like how they justify the quote. Like, they look at your links, they look at your content, they look at the sites they've sold before, etc. By far, the one that impressed me the most was FE International. Like, they really looked into our link profile. Like, they saw that we didn't pay for links. They saw like which kind of links we got. They were able to explain that. They were like, well, you got a lot of growth recently, but honestly, like, given the way you've built these links and you've been all that and you've been stable for 3 months, we're going to assume that's the baseline for your site, and explain a lot of things like this. It was really good. So we went with them. And honestly, like, that site started getting offers like 48 hours after it got up for sale. So we had to first getting like all the documents. We had to prove the income. We had to prove, give access to analytics, do all of that. Like, please install Google Analytics if you want to sell your site. I know everyone's just like freaked out about GA. But Google knows your stuff anyway. Like, people opening your site on Android or on Chrome or anything, they already get the data. Like, it's already happening. So yeah, you will need GA. You give all that stuff. They put a document together with all this data, present it nicely, sell it to like a private list of buyers first. And just from that, basically the site never hit the main marketplace, just because there was like a bunch of offers pretty much right away. So we did the first one. We started doing due diligence, where they basically recheck everything with the buyer. The buyer does check everything. And then in the meantime, people were starting to even like increase the bids. Basically, we got the first bid was like slightly below sales price, and then just like we were like, let's just see. Like, we're still within the range of sales, and then like people just like, there was more and more offers coming up, and eventually a competitor actually came up and offered like a much higher price. So we're like, well, it's really a lot of money. Let's just do that. So if you can rush the due diligence, then we'll consider it. So they did that, and yeah, and we basically closed it something like 2 or 3 weeks after we actually did the prospectus. So that was quite fast. Sorry, and the transfer took like 2 weeks or something. It was over Christmas, so we were all on Christmas holiday, just having calls every day. But it was pretty simple, to be honest. Like, I mean, I worked with their tech guy to like transfer, like, make sure the CDN images don't break, like transfer all of that. I passed the hosting to them really easily. I passed all of that, the domain name, and then there was money on escrow. Once they got all of that and they signed it off, the money got released. And I think we got like 2 calls with them after that, and then that was it, basically. All the writers came with the site as well, so they got the editorial staff with it. Which is fine by us, because anyway, we have an editorial team per site. So it was completely fine. That's also why we build our team this way, so that if you sell the site, you can sell the editorial team with it. And that's one thing I want to say as well. It's like a lot of brokers will consider your editorial staff as a cost and reduce your valuation for it. And I was like, what the fuck? If you buy a website, and you don't want this editorial stuff, you fire them on day one, and this is not an expense anymore. And that content doesn't disappear. All the content that was done, like, we spent thousands of dollars for one writer position very often. It's a lot of plus our personal time. Like, it's a huge asset to be passed on an editorial team. Like, when I see brokers penalizing you because they're like, oh, it's a cost, so I'm like, no, it's an investment in growth. And you decide to make that investment or you don't. The content doesn't disappear overnight when the writers are not around anymore. And so that's part of the valuation process, where I'm like, well, the industry really needs to start maturing in how they break down costs, because they'll treat you like your hosting. They treat your writer cost like they treat your hosting cost. Your site can't exist without your hosting cost, but it can exist with your writers not being on payroll. And so, like, yeah, there's a lot of things like that where you go through brokers and you be like, guys, like, it's time to learn your own business model, basically. So that was one gripe I had against brokers. Not all of them are like that. But yeah, it's something that you need to like negotiate, bargain, and if you push back, you very often, especially high-end buyers, man, they do the same. They spend so much money in hiring. They do want these writers. If they like that site, it's because they like the content. If I give them the writers, it's added value. And it's like for them, for the buyers in our case, like they valued this massively. They really wanted to keep the writers on board, and they're still writing for that site. And that site is growing because the same editorial team is still here. So it's something that is the kind of thing that you can push back, and it's the kind of thing that like people who want to build high quality site get penalized for by a lot of site brokers. Well, really, they should be rewarded for it. And it's that's why I say push back a bit and negotiate and try a bunch of site brokers.
For you guys, how bad was the due diligence piece? I've had sites where I've sold them, probably not to the multiple that you guys have, and the due diligence has been like hit or miss. It's either been like almost none or like just a ridiculous amount. Like
depends who the buyer is, man. It's like 100% customer to the buyer. Like, what do they want to see? And it's like, I mean, for us it was good because I mean this was a big buyer. He had like multiple $1 million to spend on buying websites. Like he does that regularly to get who bought the sites. So he was fine, and he knew our site because we were competitors as well. So it was very simple for him to see that. But I've heard many stories of, like seasonal niches, for example, where like, yeah, sales go up and down. It's normal. It's the trend, right? And it's like, in the buying process, you start going into kind of like a period where the sales just go lower and the buyers just freak out because they're like, oh my God, sales are dropping. This site is already fucked and I'm about to buy this. No way, etc. I'm out. It's like, no, that's seasonality. It's like when winter comes, the golfing niche is not as popular. It's like it's part of how it works, and ice cream doesn't sell as much in winter. It's like, and so like I've heard a lot of these stories. For us, it was easy, but I think that's as variable as the way the brokers value your site, basically. So the whole industry is just like up in the air, still trying to figure itself out. And as a result, like pretty much every site sell is a different experience. From our experience, like every time has been different. Last time has been quite smooth, etc. I'm sure next time is going to be horrible just because we had such a good time last time.
Yeah. I've only sold a couple of sites, and they were very vastly different experiences. So that's why.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it makes sense. You mentioned, or we talked about briefly kind of your team a little bit, but you haven't talked about Mark. Can you kind of talk about Mark briefly and kind of what you do versus Mark and how you guys kind of separate your roles?
So complicated because it's like most people expect like, it's just for us, it's just we developed our skill set together. So we don't necessarily have like a traditional breakdown like most businesses will have.
Okay.
Like he does some of the marketing, I do some of the marketing. Like I'll handle the tech stuff, he'll handle like the tax and everything. I'll handle editorial quality, but he'll handle editorial process. So he'll make sure people get shit done, and I'll make sure they do good shit. I come up with link building angles, all that stuff. He also oversees operations. So I guess I'm like creating tactics more, and he oversees them happening. And I get more I guess I'm like a bit more creative and he's more operations, but like still within the same processes. Like usually you just give all of link building to one person or all of that, but it kind of works in the sense that having both of us, we push back on each other as well. So I'm like, oh, you guys are doing volume, but look at these shit links. Like seriously, like, is that gonna move the needle? Or like, yeah, sure, you ramped up the content by 20%, but honestly, like I would never read this. And it's like it just allows to like get that thing, and we talk like this to each other because we knew each other for so long.
I think that's why your guys' podcast is so good, right? Because I can see that banter back and forth, and how you guys create prototype very quickly internally is also kind of the same environment, I feel like, as your podcast.
Yeah, pretty much. It's exactly the same. I mean, the podcast is just us calling each other and just chatting. That's what the podcast is. So yeah, it's like the breakdown is very well, and that it's kind of stupid in the sense that it would be very hard for us to work with someone else because it's just like we've been working for like it's just like shaped us. But like if you work with anyone else that has been more like segmented in a traditional way, then we would be lacking some skills and we would have overlaps as well. And so like it's so far so good, so it's fine. But yeah, so it's good to have both sides on a part of things. So it's not like we do the work twice, but like we also get double the critical sense and feedback on it. And there's two people that care, right? Like nobody will care as much about your business as you. And you know it when you hire writers, you know it when you hire link builders, you know it when you hire support people, all of that. Like you see it, it's just not as good ever. If you hire account managers when you have a service, you see it as well massively. And so like it's even better when two of you look at most processes. And also when we have our weekly meetings, we're able to really catch up in depth about each thing, you know.
All right. So the big thing that I wanted to cover with you, and I'm cognizant of time, is link building, and we haven't really gotten into almost any link building at all. So one of the things that I've been watching, and I saw you guys do, was your shotgun skyscraper kind of rollout. So I've been doing a ton of guest posting, a ton of sponsored posts as well. I teach my students kind of my angles and how we do it, and it's really simple. I mean, we go for volume over anything. We kind of then we do some quick quality checks, make sure the sites have traffic and stuff once they've said yes, right? Similar, I think, to what you guys do. But we're just doing guest posts and we're just doing sponsored posts. We're definitely not doing kind of the skyscraper model. So could you talk about kind of the differences or plus or minuses between the both and kind of how you got to where you guys are at today?
Okay, I mean, skyscraper is great because there's no marginal cost of content. So like whenever you do a post, you need to get content in. I'm sure most of your writer headaches comes from that, especially when you're dealing with a third-party website that just wants the content right now or whatever, or it's not good enough. It's really annoying. So skyscraper just kind of skips that. It just like pitches implementing a link in an existing piece of content. One thing that can be cool with skyscraper is you can get links from pages that have links, which can be quite interesting. You often don't nearly have as much control on anchor text though, because like you're not writing the content, they're kind of like editing the content and adding the link in there. I would argue as well that links added to old pieces of content feel sluggish in terms of taking effect in your ranking more than like a brand new page, a brand new index page, etc. So, but over time it kind of catches up. But like, you know, within the first 2 months, like sometimes it takes a long time, you know. But really the big advantage of it is you don't have to pay for extra content, which is kind of nice. And you don't have to run that whole content process to get it. It's really just a pure negotiation process with another website to be like, hey, is my link good enough to add on your page? The approach is similar to what you described. So it's like large volume. A lot of people like hate that. And to them, I'm like, does every single ad you see on Facebook seem 100% relevant to you? And yet these businesses keep spending money, and Facebook is the biggest social network in the world, right? It's like so it's kind of like advertising through email, basically. That's kind of what.
I mean, I think you've got to have the shotgun approach personally on the front. Just like I've tried it in reverse and doing highly customized pitches and lots of research on the front. And every time I've done it and I've compared it to kind of the more of the shotgun approach, so to speak, it's always not done as well, just personally.
So for us, we actually split our prospect list in two these days. So like the really high DR ones, we actually do customers outreach. So anything above DR65 usually goes into like bus stream, etc., and goes the old way, because like one link there is worth like I would say 10 skyscraper easily. And then we like usually anything below DR25 we don't even outreach to them, and then 25 to 65 shotgun. So we kind of like have this whole segmentation system that goes into that and puts people where they belong the most. So it's like there was a guy in the HRS group that like got mad at me. He's like, "Oh, you sent me a generic outreach email, etc." I'm like, "Let me guess, you're between DR 25 and 65." you're like, you have this and this and this. It's like, yeah. I'm like, well, then the process works.
Yes, you didn't have quite the quality metrics that we need in order to do the research.
I mean, I was like, no hard feeling. I don't think anyone in the HPEPS group is gonna complain about optimizing your cost per link, right? It's like it's like you're doing marketing. You're not running a charity. If you want, just make money with marketing and invest it in charities, and then you'll help the world better, you know. So yeah, basically that's kind of the main difference. I think the rest of your approach seems quite similar to what we're doing. There's a lot of like small details in all these things, like how to optimize your delivery, like how to A/B test your campaigns, build custom templates for each approach, etc. That like we cover quite a lot in the course and so on. It's also challenges with scaling. When you start sending a lot of emails, like you will struggle sometimes reaching the main inbox. You will often get into the spam box, etc. You need to be a bit careful. So yeah, it's more of like a detailed game at this point. I think the main strategy is pretty public. We have a full blog post on how we do things in bird's eye view on the blog as well that we released not that long ago. And
we'll definitely link there in the show notes for sure for everybody. When it comes to content then for the skyscraper, you say that one of the main benefits, right, is that you don't have to write a piece of content for every guest post, but you definitely have to write something that's good.
Of course,
in order to get the link. So when you're thinking about kind of qualifications for a skyscraper, what are you looking at? Like how do you come up with a topic, an idea for a skyscraper?
There's like a super easy way to do it. There's like it's stupid. It's like, so keyword research, keyword difficulty on Ahrefs is only based on external links to page, like up to the top 10. So what you do, you pick the highest keyword difficulty keywords in your niche, and that's it. That's your topics. It's that simple.
Okay. So then, what's your writing spec look like for the writers then? Like, how do you come up with something that looks and feels amazing, sounds amazing, reads amazing on the other end? So when we're doing guest posts and sponsor posts, right? Like, and we're writing the content, we're just going to BuzzSumo and we're finding, good content that's been written, and then we're just rewriting that content. So like, I'm not reinventing any wheel, so to speak. So with that being said, how would you take my approach and actually end up with some good skyscraper content?
Okay, for skyscraper, we do it differently for a lot of things I mentioned before. Like, remember when I said like, social shares feed links, feed organic traffic? Well, you can kill two birds in one stone here. Like, sure, you can make a skyscraper that's just a rewrite of something that's done. And honestly, if you are a good headline, you can get decent shares. But like, it's also your opportunity to kind of like make a mark in your niche and actually like stand out and build that real authority. So you might as well just do that. And so the first thing we do is we find other pieces of content on the topic, the best ones, basically. We have the top 3, we put them in the brief, writers have to read them. Second of all, we scan these pieces of content, we find all the subheadings, we put all of them in a tool called Dinah List. And we start ordering all these headings to make sure we hit all the subtopics properly. And then after that, we'll do things like searching on YouTube for like tutorials and actionable stuff and like real life things on doing these things. And then just extract that information and put it under each thing. And usually, like usually it's going to be a list post, or it's going to be something like this. So you write each subheading that way, and you'll mention a lot of these external sources, etc. You just become that hub that just treats all of that properly. And then if you're explaining concepts, etc., we have illustrators that like illustrate this thing and just make it look cool, etc. And a lot of things that make skyscrapers stand out is actually just the way your site looks, your branding, your site template, etc. If your site looks good, even like just copy paste content on the WordPress editor can look quite good. So most of the time, the people that will listen to this podcast will have a shitty template on WordPress, and they will create something great, but when they put it on their site, it's still going to look like not nice. So I highly recommend people spend time on their branding properly. It's going to help with the skyscraper process. It's going to pay dividends eventually. And it's kind of fun to do anyway. We use the Elementor theme builder these days. It's quite good. Like, you can really just like tweak pretty much any part of your site. Yes, it's not the absolute best for page speed, but I'm willing to sacrifice like 0.2 seconds page load for actually being able to change stuff on my site easily. And if you use proper caching, etc., like you can still get like 1 second page loads.
Yeah, your guys' site is looking great these days as well. You mentioned Dinah List. What is that?
Dinah List. It's basically like a mind mapping tool. It's kind of like bullet point based. So it's kind of there's another tool called Workflowy that does the same thing.
Okay.
But this one is better, basically. Like the folder system is better, etc. It's free, and like even the podcast when we do it, like we're not just like free talking. We actually have like everything in bullet points and following it through, etc. That's what allows us to just not ramble the whole time, and so the Dinah List is where I spend probably half of my day easily. Like half of all my days are spent on Dinah List.
Okay. Yeah, we'll definitely have to link that up in the show notes. I've definitely used Workflowy, but hadn't heard of Dinah List. Cool. Thanks for the resource there.
No worries.
All right, fantastic, good stuff. So working on all of these authority sites, like how do you manage to run all of these? Like obviously, it seems like you and Mark are very organized. It seems like you guys are pretty systematized, process driven. But kind of what's the structure that helps you guys manage these from project to project, from day to day?
First of all, we don't work on everything all the time. It's not possible to do high quality work, and we just have the mind space to just work on everything. We have a lot of sites on standby. Like we have sites that we've shared publicly that we haven't touched in like a year plus. And that's kind of the point of building these passive income sites. Is sometimes you just don't work on them and you do something else. So like we often have like one main focus and we work on that, and then we have quarterly plannings. We meet up in real life. We rent like a nice hotel meeting room or something, and we just make the list of everything we want to do in the next 3 months and like what we want to achieve, and just go through that and do nothing else. So and we use Asana for tasks. So like we actually have like this project with like all the quarterly planning tasks, and then we catch up on them every week, and we derive smaller tasks from them. Like let's say one of our tasks is like redesigning a site. So maybe there's like we need to get a logo done, we need the colors, we need all of that, etc. So like these are subtasks that we do, and we pick some of these tasks every week and just progress towards what we want to do for this quarter. Next quarter, do it again. So, awesome. But like we don't work on everything all the time. Like it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. We also don't work on that many projects, to be frank. Like we try to do things right rather than like do a lot of things. I would argue that sometimes maybe we should try to do more things and be willing to sacrifice a degree of quality. That might be our weakness. But our readers don't complain. But but it's true that sometimes we do sacrifice a bit of growth just for like because we want to do things right. It's up to you. Like provided your business does okay, it's a decision you can make.
So on your authority sites that are kind of sitting in the background, so to speak, on pause, is content being added and such, or it's just like sitting as is? Okay, so you'll give the content team like 180 posts like you did on the last one, and when it's kind of done, it's kind of done, and maybe you'll revisit it, or?
Yeah, exactly. So think about it. Like every time, like basically when you do keyword research, when we do our keyword planning, basically from what I've said, it's going to be like these low end, like easy to rank monetized keywords. There's going to be these high KD keywords that are going to like build the topical authority and the links to the sites through skyscraper. So it's kind of like the two ends that we have. But every time you add a piece of content on each end, the next keyword is usually, if you've done your keyword research properly, not as good as the previous one, right? So like the highest KD keyword in your niche is probably going to yield the most links. And then you go down. Once you have like hundreds of pages, the opportunity cost is actually not nearly as good as it was when you just started the site. Now, how big the amount of pages is depends on how focused your niche is. If you're on a very focused niche, it's going to be a fairly small site. If you're like a broad site, then you're going to have a lot of pages that you can do that have a good opportunity cost. And so the way we look at it is we look at all the stuff that we have in our portfolio, and we're like, what's the best opportunity cost right now? What are we going to look at right now? And so sometimes it's just like, sometimes it would make sense to add more content, but we just don't have the bandwidth to deal with it because, hey, we're not perfect, far from it. And so, we just try to basically maximize our time and money by just putting money and time where it's going to have the best return. And so sometimes, and many times, it means just like, it's not worth it. So it's like, it's either going face to face with the really, really big sites in the niche, like the DR90s, etc., which we're not necessarily ready to compete with. Yeah, or like maybe we ran out of keywords for that one offer that made us a lot of money, or like that kind of stuff. It can happen, you don't really create, like you will optimize content, you will tweak the site, you will do SEO stuff, but like you don't necessarily have to add content all the time. Like I'm really not a big fan of the blogging model anymore, where you feel obligated to post all the time. If you check on Editorial Hacker, I have killed the blog feed. There's no blog feed anymore. Wow. At all. There is I've kind of like stolen it from Facebook and YouTube. There's like a notification bell, and you click and you can find the latest posts, but there's no blog page anymore.
Yeah, I see a lot of people moving that way. And we've talked a lot about that actually on the podcast. Tim Solo and I were discussing that. And speaking of Tim from Ahrefs, you mentioned Dinah List, you mentioned Ahrefs, you mentioned Elementor. Any other big tools these days that like are making your life a lot easier that you would recommend?
We like Software SEO lately as well for on page. It's really good. I'm sure Matt also talked about it.
Okay. Actually, he didn't.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah.
surprising. He showed it to me actually.
Okay.
So yeah, Surface is like an unpaid. It's like a correlational unpaid tool. So it basically scrapes the top 100 results, and it looks at like what is the most common across all the pages that rank, and tells you, oh, like this word count, this keyword density, this stuff like that, and it allows you to like tweak your pages. And most
Yep.
of the time, you got positive results. Not every time. These things don't work 100% of the time, and there's 100 reasons why. But overall, it's been quite good, and they have like this content auditing. You put your URL, it tells you exactly what to change, what to do, etc. And it's quite
Okay.
nice. It's start at like $29 a month, and they're adding a text editor as well right now. So you'll be able to copy paste your content and just like you'll be able to edit add the keywords in, etc.
How's that compare to something like Quora?
I mean, Quora is the best on-page SEO tool, but like, how much time do you spend optimizing one page with Quora?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's
Quora just the means
Ted is the smartest guy I've met in SEO. 100% great guy, but in terms of usability and in terms of like giving that to an employee, it's complicated, you know.
Yeah, my eyes bleed looking at that tool. It's amazing, but it's an
Yeah,
all day type of tool. It's me going on a bender for a day or two.
it's like X
Okay.
rumor resurrected, you know. It's
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Those were the
But
days,
like,
man.
I can't give that to staff. Like, people are just gonna start rolling their eyes. And just overall, once again, the opportunity cost. Like, it is better by a fair margin, I would say, than any other on-page tool, 100%. But like, for most queries, you don't need to go that deep. You just
Yeah,
don't. You just need to be good enough and like be 80/20 it. And it's often the best opportunity cost as a business to do that rather than like spend 5 days on one page on a site with like hundreds of pages, you know?
yeah, yeah. I love you talking about opportunity cost too, and that's how I run kind of our quarterly meetings and 90-day kind of check-ins on our plans is the same thing. And even from week to week, I catch myself just looking at the opportunity cost. It's like zooming out and it's like looking at all
Yeah.
the opportunities of things I could be working on, and it's like, how long is it going to take and what's the payout? And some things like they just get ignored. I mean, and people do get upset every once in a while, but again, like we don't run
Same with
businesses
us.
for charity. Like we do it for a profit. So we're going to focus on the things that are going to make obviously the biggest impact.
You want to make sure you deliver a good experience to your customers. You want to make sure you deliver what you promised them. But then it's like, if you are a perfectionist, then you will never grow a business because you cannot. It's just impossible. Like, unless you're like a really well polished 100 years old Fortune 500 company like Coca-Cola, it's not happening. Like, you never put a bottle of Coke. It's not good. It's just the same thing every time. Like, it always works. But to be frank, this has taken 100 years and like millions of people if you count the turnover of people, you know? So it's not exactly something that's switchable within your lifetime and or within the amount of people that you have available to you. So most people need to accept things are not okay. Like, so many times I get like, oh, something is broken on your site or whatever. Like, yeah, I mean, first of all, we try stuff all the time. We're just like, yeah, we make mistakes all the time. Most of the stuff we learn is because we fucked up before. Uh,
Yeah.
and and it's like, yeah, it's we do a lot of things wrong, and it's fine. What counts is like your trajectory as a whole company, you know?
Yep. 100%. Yeah. We move fast and we break shit. It's okay. We'll fix it someday.
Yeah. No, I think that there needs to be like as you grow, you should definitely allocate a percentage of your resources to like fixing things and optimizing them. But it's
Definitely.
that you kind of have a budget for it. You basically have a budget for it, and when it's expanded, it's done. Like, you don't have it anymore, and then you just work on progressing. But like, for us, we probably spend like 15-20% of our resources in fixing and optimizing things.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, that's a great way to look at it too. Any of those maintenance tasks, like obviously you or Mark shouldn't be on anyway. That shouldn't
Yeah,
occupy your headspace.
unless we'll have to figure it out. So like, we're figuring out a lot of like on-page optimization right now. So like, yeah, I do some just to like test things, see what's working, what's not working, and once I've found something that works, I just show it to someone and they do it for us. You know.
Yep, 100%. Cool, man. I've really enjoyed having you on the podcast. I got one more question, but before we get to that, where should we link up to you guys in the show notes? Obviously, we can link
I
over
think
to. Authority Hacker and to the podcast. What are the other places for you guys?
Yeah, I think we do a good job enough at call to actions on the homepage. You can go for it, It's like
Okay.
No, actually, I'm just gonna say the free webinar we give on the homepage is it's quite in depth. So if you want a big training on authority sites, yes, we will pitch you a course at the end, but you can literally watch the free training. It's I talk for an hour and a half or 2 hours. Showing all this stuff in detail, and I have the opportunity to show screenshots and show me doing stuff, which plugins we use, all that stuff. So if people want more details on the how to and the real nitty-gritty on doing these things, then the webinar on the homepage is actually a good place to start.
Okay, awesome, cool. So instead of asking you to recommend your favorite book or your favorite 3 books, I want to do something a little different. I feel like that's kind of the norm for podcasts. I want to ask you what's the one book, right, that's made a huge impact on the way that you do business?
The Lean Startup, I think. Lean Startup. It's I read it ages ago, but it's my favorite. I think my favorite part of the book is when he talks about sending 100 wedding invitations, and he's how are you gonna do it? Fold it, fold all of them, then put all of them in the envelope, etc. He's yeah, what if you fold all of them and you realize they don't fit the envelope? You just wasted all your time. It's faster to do things small, one by one, even though it seems inefficient, until you actually understand the process properly, and then after that, automate it. So you should run everything once from A to Z before you build a process around it. And I think 99% of SEO people try to automate stuff that has never made money, and that's where they waste most of their time.
Yep. Love that. That's a great analogy. Yeah, we got to do it first. We got to get a result first, right? Yeah. And then decide, if that's what we should be spending our time systematizing. For sure.
It applies to building websites as well. I see a lot of beginners start 5 websites. I'm what are you doing? I don't build 5 websites at once. No way. Building 5 editorial teams, etc. at once. No chance. People try to all the time try to do many big scale things because they think that's the way, but they don't even understand their own business yet.
Yep, 100%. Couldn't agree more. Awesome book. Thanks for the recommendation. And everybody, thank you for joining us on another episode of Show Me the Nuggets. And thanks so much, Gael, for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
See you guys.
Now, before you go, I have something extremely special for you. What if some of the top entrepreneurs of our entire industry went a little nuts and decided that they give away their best products for free? Well, forget the what if. This is actually happening, all right? These top entrepreneurs join me, and we are now running a contest to give you their best products absolutely free. And you don't want to miss out on this amazing opportunity. So go check it out at digitaltriggers.io/contest. And I want you guys to understand that yes, this is a contest, but there is quite literally something for everyone. So just by joining, you are a winner. So go check it out at digitaltriggers.io/contest. Again, that's digitaltriggers.io/contest. And guys, again, this is a limited time contest. So go ahead and do it now before it's too late. We'll see you on the next episode.